Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius testified before Congress for hours today, saying she should be held accountable for the failures of the Affordable Care Act's website that's been down for much of the time since it debuted on October 1st.
Let me say directly to these Americans, you deserve better. I apologize. I'm accountable to you for fixing these problems, and I'm committed to earning your confidence back by fixing the site.
That while President Barack Obama was winging his way to Boston, holding a town hall-style forum at historic Faneuil Hall to tout the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, even if the website is not currently working.
So healthcare reform in this state was a success. That doesn't mean it was perfect right away. There were early problems to solve. There were changes that had to be made.
Faneuil Hall, of course, is where Mitt Romney signed the Massachusetts health care reform law into effect in 2006. And as we saw today with a little newsroom experiment I conducted, the state website is humming along, even while the federal site remains down. For the last few days, I've just been starting this from scratch, from the basics, as if I didn't know anything. So I Google the Affordable Care Act, ACA, and right away HealthCare.gov comes up. I click on that. And then I'm instantly at the healthcare site. So far, so good. It sounds pretty easy. And then there's this thing that says apply online. I hit that. And then very easy, it says pick your state. So, of course, I'm going to pick Massachusetts. And it instantly sends me visit the Health Connector now to apply. Okay. I'm in. I can start picking anything I want because it's the Massachusetts Health Connector. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to pick a state that doesn't have its own site, that doesn't have its own health care program. So I'm going to go Maine, lovely neighboring state. Apply online, Maine. Bingo. Now I've got this note. The last few days it was actually just hanging up right here. It wouldn't connect all the way through. Now they've got this notice up. The system is down at the moment. Well, I think it's going to be more than a moment. Well, my next guests make a living overseeing website rollouts. Richard Banfield is the CEO of the web development firm Fresh Tilled Soil. And Chris Comparato is an executive at the cloud-based software company Acquia. Hope I said that right. So you can just imagine what this was like for the government. Right. I mean, this is one of those websites that starts enormous and probably will get smaller over time, which is the opposite of what most websites are. But what do you think tripped them up the most? I mean, other than couldn't possibly have imagined how many people would try this instantly, because as we know in Massachusetts, people didn't try it right away. They waited and waited and waited. Right.
So you've hinted at the one factor, which is rolling it out too quickly across all the states, so trying to be everything to everybody at the same time. And then I think from what we've seen, both in the press and from the companies themselves that worked on it, a lot of indecision, a lot of bad planning. These days, when you roll out a big project like this, you normally take on a methodology that allows you to do incremental or small amounts of rollouts, whereas I think they try to just do everything at the same time.
What about decision-making? Do you think it was a lot of committee stuff, Chris?
I think decision-making is a huge element here, and accountability for those decisions. Management, when you look at large, complex projects, you look at people and process and technology. The people part of it is all about risk management and making sure that when management's making decisions, they're very well-informed decisions. You mentioned, they can't imagine what they're going to be hit with. Well, good managers can test what are the possible scenarios and how do we plan for those scenarios? Where are the risks? What if this does tip over? Can we test against that?
They did test it a couple of days before with the same results. It failed. Right. So why would they go ahead with it?
It seems like a lot of the pressure was political. Now, we're not political experts, so we can't exactly talk to that topic. But if it was not testing correctly, then you would delay that test, or delay the launch and do some more testing and fix those bugs. So it seems like they were pushing for an agenda that wasn't necessarily related to the performance of the technology.
Yeah, the other comment I'll make is that on large, complex projects, you test throughout. And you have to weave that testing throughout the entire life cycle and take an approach where you can build and then test. And there's many different forms of testing. So it shouldn't be at the end. It should be throughout the entire process so that your confidence level that it's going to be resilient has improved.
Right. When Kathleen Sebelius was testifying earlier today, she made a comment that I think took everybody off guard, and rather than spoil it, I'll let you hear what she had to say.
The website has never crashed. It is functional, but at a very slow speed and very low reliability, and has continued to function.
This thing doesn't function at all. I mean, now there's that memo that comes up that says we're down for the moment, which is also ridiculous because I haven't been able to get through all week. But what's her definition of it didn't crash?
Well, it's timing out. So the data is not getting to you as quickly as it needs to. So the browser's basically giving up. It's saying, oh, we didn't get what we wanted, so we're going to stop looking.
So, but you couldn't just stay on that site all day and expect it to eventually click through.
You were if you didn't have a job like the rest of us do.
Yeah, and the other point to make is there's many components to a large, complex website, and it could be, in fact, that some of the components were operational, but other components and integration points could have been failing. But to the end user, it's a failure. You can't get through.
Yeah, it's a crash.
Right. It's having a flat tire on your car. There's only one thing that's broken on the car, but you can't take it anywhere.
So is the way the government does these things different, would you say, than in the private sector? I mean, when AOL first rolled out, I mean, that was an amazing thing. That website was just like, wow, instantaneously. Or Amazon and some of these others. I mean, is it different in the private sector?
Mostly at the procurement level and the decision-making level, which Chris mentioned. The way that we do things in the private sector is, of course, to do this iterative approach, what's often referred to as agile or lean. These are small incremental steps that allow you to test and find out what's working, what's not going to work. Whereas the government does it on a more wholesale level. They're trying to keep decision-making with one group or one area of the organization. So.
I would argue, though, that it is changing. We do work with a number of government agencies, and they're starting to adopt different ways to do projects, the agile approach, where you can do some design, do some building, do some testing throughout, and get more user adoption earlier in the life cycle of a project so that it's going to be successful, and you're more confident in success. So I would say that the government, in certain areas, is actually changing to adopt some of the commercial
using
best
outside
practices.
people like you. But I think it was you, Chris, I was saying that one of the problems was kind of this integration of the systems, that it wasn't just, maybe it was you, Richard, wasn't just the problem of clicking onto the site, but all the other things that it had to kind of take you to.
Right. Yeah, there were a lot of things at play here, a lot of state organizations that had to integrate. And like the metaphor of the car, if one thing is broken, then a lot of other things are not going to, allow you to.
So is Massachusetts the only one that's working?
I think there are a couple of others. I believe I heard earlier today that Kentucky and a couple of others are working.
That is pretty catastrophic. And for them to say now the end of November, is that acceptable? Because they're not going to move the deadline for people to sign up. March 31st is still the deadline.
Well, I deal with clients every day who go through critical situations like that. And I think at the moment you've got to bring in some decision makers and some management that understand how to really look at this and say, what are the biggest areas that we need to tackle? I don't think end of November is unreasonable because it's a very complex system, and there's many pieces that have to get looked at. Perhaps they look at different states and what's broken for different states, but I think but it's better than a restart. I think they've got to really attack this
because it looks good. I mean, if they can accomplish it, it looks good. All right, Chris Comparato and Richard Banfield, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that is it for Greater Boston. Tomorrow, fallout from the latest revelations about the NSA surveillance. We'll be joined by the former U.S. ambassador to Spain, one of the nations now demanding answers from American diplomats. Plus, you think you're a diehard Sox fan? We'll tell you which member of our newsroom is a reporter by day, but a K-man on game day. I'm Emily Rooney. Go Red Sox. Maybe that story will be irrelevant by tomorrow.